the ESEA Season 18 LAN Finals was, in some senses, a pretty significant tournament, even though in terms of prestige, I mean, it's not up there with a big Tier 1 event or some of the bigger Tier 2 events. Didn't have a field that featured all of the world's best teams. I mean, notable teams that were missing. Well, two great teams, obviously number 2 and number 3 team, which is Envious, the French team, and NIP, the Swedish team. And then it also didn't have TSM there, didn't have Na'Vi there. So it's missing some of the teams, but it still had Virtus.pro, number 4 team for me. Had Fnatic, who were my number 1 team previously. Had Titan, who were a very solid underdog team, maybe number 6 team. And then it had best NA teams as well, some of them at least. Now, since I wasn't at the event and I didn't do analysis there, I thought I'd do a video where I actually break down some of my thoughts on the event. I might do this just as text in the future, I haven't decided, but I thought this time I'll try as a video. So, first place first, just ESEA LAN, the setting. As I broke down there, it does have some great teams there. Virtus.pro, obviously one of the great teams of all time in CSGO. Fnatic, the best team at the moment. It was still their era, at least until this event, where they were the dominant team. We also had the fact that actually, one of the facts that seemed to go under the radar a little bit was that first place at this tournament was $70,000. Now, to put that in context, the only tournaments that have had a higher first place prize than this ESEA LAN were the 5 majors we've had, which were all $100,000 first. Otherwise, no other tournament was $70,000. In fact, none were even close to $70,000 for first place. So actually, it's the 6th most significant tournament of all time in CSGO in terms of just prize money. Now, that was also interesting because obviously, with some of the past seasons, there were issues in terms of teams like NIP, Envious, where some of them got banned from the league for not wanting to attend past finals. So anyway, there's a whole political grounds there. So as a result, the context that it set up for this tournament was that on paper, it looked like it would be easier for Fnatic to win the money. It looked like this is an easy 70k for them. And then Virtus.pro, they're the team with the best sort of outside chance to beat Fnatic there. And hey, maybe Titan could make an upset and make a final, and then they're going to pick up a lot of money otherwise than normal, because even second place was 25k. So it had an interesting effect on it in terms of just the prize money in that sense. So what we'll do is we'll start at the top. We'll start with the winners and we'll work our way down and give you some thoughts. So Virtus.pro won the event. Now, this is a very big news because if you think about how the year went for Virtus.pro, they had the terrible performance at Asus ROG Winter, where they went out in the fucking group stage. They didn't even make top 4, and an event where a team like Penta and Hellraisers were making top 4. So absolutely dreadful performance there. That meant they dropped off. And the first time they hadn't made a top 4 in seemingly forever. They had all those great top 4 finishes in 2014, the most of any team, and they had a lot of consistency, even if they'd only won 2 big events. Then at the iOS Pantamera, again they bombed. They were out of the group stage again and missed another top 4. Dreadful performance. I think they only won 1 map, which was the map of Cash against Titan. Then we had the major, and suddenly they were back and they were very strong again. This was Virtus.pro right back in prime form. They took Fnatic. Yes, Fnatic won in 2 maps to 0 in the semi-finals, but Virtus.pro really took them the distance. This was one of the most competitive games that Fnatic had in that tournament. And obviously they were a great team and won it, only losing 1 map. But great semi-final. You thought, wow, Virtus.pro's really back to contending. They're strong again. Then Star Series came along. They got utterly smashed by NIP in really disgraceful fashion. And then they lost to TSM in a really close series, like a great, awesome series to watch. Now that storyline, obviously finishing last place Star Series, is pretty bad, but a very competitive event. Then you go over to Copenhagen Games, not that many good teams there. The main team, TSM, obviously, they battle TSM again. It's a great matchup each time they play them, and they manage to win the event. Yeah, only TSM there, Flipside, Dignitas, but only really TSM of the top level teams, and no elite teams there. So it's not a major event. It's not even. It's hard to even argue. I'd say it's like a tier 3 event personally. But okay, they've won a little decent event there. They had the major semi-final. Winning this event is a big statement because, first of all, they beat Fnatic in a best of 3. Now, that's big-time shit. Very few teams have done that in this era of Fnatic's dominance. And also, they were able to move past Titan, who've had some great form over the last 2 months or so. Especially in a couple of recent tournaments in terms of the teams they've played against and on what maps. So this is a big time win for Virtus.pro. It's not up there with the tier 1 events, but okay, it's establishing them back again as now it's not just like Envy and Fnatic up here. Now it's like, okay, NiP at the moment hasn't actually been able to beat Envy and being able to beat Fnatic and win a big event, but now Virtus.pro's at least done it here. Beating TSM was like one thing, like keeping your spot at like 3rd or 4th, but now Virtus.pro's contending to actually, hey, maybe we can take some of these titles from Envious and Fnatic going forwards, which was the problem. You could see Envious and Fnatic would be a great matchup against each other, but it looked like no one was going to beat those two in best of 3 series, even though obviously NiP did beat Envious in a best of 3 at Katowice. But beyond that, it had been pretty dominant the other way around in that matchup. So very significant that VP gets this win here. They did it looking like classic VP. Like their style here for a lot of the tournament leading up to the final was just hanging in there, scrappy, just really good, but not godlike CT play, where, you know, they'd get the 9 rounds where that was just the minimum they could get. They'd get the 7-8 rounds on CT. They'd hang in there, and then they'd allow themselves these chances on Terrace side to get into the Virtus.pro mode. That just barrage where once the key thing with the Virtus.pro is they tend to have to get the rounds early on. And when you really know the oppression of the Virtus.pro is when you're on a map like, okay, a great example is like on Inferno. If you're on Inferno and VP gets up like 3-1, 5-1, 6-2, they've already got as many rounds as they need on T side. So then the pressure of knowing that you can't lose any other rounds, and you do all these half buys and you're trying these crazy setups to get back in the game, and they're still just running over you, still smashing you, hitting you even harder, just hitting any site they want, overrunning it. This is where they completely break opponents mentally, and they had these great T sides. They had at least 3 that were really significant here. Against Titan in the upper bracket final, after the first map, Titan won solidly. Second map, Cash, was really close affair, but VP came through, and then the third map, Inferno, where Titan's been a great team. They're a very good team on Inferno. This time, VP took that all away from them because they just smashed them on that first half as terrorists. They just destroyed them, and they got so many T rounds that it was over. The plow had been engaged, and Titan was out. It wasn't even a competitive third map. Then you go to the final, and the 2 maps that VP won was classic Virtus.pro mode, because in the first map, Season, a map that admittedly the teams don't play very often, Fnatic particularly doesn't play it. So they play this map, first half as terrorist, VP does it again. Classic Virtus.pro, they get enough rounds, they get this monster number of rounds, I think there's like 12 T rounds or something, where no one's going to come back from that one. And you're playing against Fnatic, who won the all-time, I say the best CT team in the world. So once you've done that, that's pretty much in the bag already. Okay, Fnatic takes a second map, fair enough. The third map, Cash, another Cash game. The second half is VP playing on T side, and after a scrappy CT half, they just do work on this fucking T half, and they get it done where, again, they've closed the series out, and they've done it in impressive fashion, and against another monster team, not only on CT, but a good Cash team, one of the best Cash teams. So very big shit there to get that performance done, very impressive. I think Season being in this map pool, where obviously it isn't in Europe, did help versus Fnatic, because one of the problems that they've had in the past was getting a map pool where they'd have a chance to win 2 of the 3 maps. Like the map pools when VP played, they'd always be in with a decent chance to get 1 map. That could be doable. But usually they'd end up playing maps like, well, Inferno and Cash are the 2 most likely they're going to play, because both like them. Mirage is VP's favourite map, but, or at least historically their best map. But listen, fucking Fnatic are amazing on Mirage. Okay, neither team in general in the past had been playing Nuke. Overpass, I don't know that VP want to play that. Cobblestone at this point in time has totally changed, even though VP said they wanted it in the past, but now they've been banning it sometimes. So to be able to have Season in there, and that Fnatic are willing to let it come through because of the other things they want to ban out, that meant they got a best of 3 of Season, Inferno, Cash. Now Inferno, come on man, Fnatic's always going to win that. They're the best team in the world. They're the best team ever on Inferno, basically. They're fucking unreal on that. Their win rate offline is insane. It's something like, they've won something like 26 out of 32 times they've played offline on, like, mind-blowing shit. So VP has a chance on it. They're very good on Inferno, but the odds are they weren't going to win that. So that one's already going to Fnatic. So now you need to be able to win the other 2 maps. Now Cash, yes, Fnatic are one of the best on it, but so are VP. And their style is even different to Fnatic's style. So that they were always going to have a chance there. I'd have put them as a slight underdog there, but they were always going to have a chance there. So there's a chance to get the 2 maps. And then throw in that Season. We really don't know what we can say about Fnatic on that. And it's a map where you can be very strong on T-side, and VP have these monster T-sides when they get their game rolling. So I think this was the key thing here, that all 3 maps gave VP a good chance. Admittedly, I'll change that. Inferno didn't give VP a good chance. It gave them a chance. Cash gave them a decent chance, and Season gave them a pretty good chance. And they were able to play well in this series and to make advantage where on all 3 maps, in theory, they had this chance, even though Fnatic did comfortably take Inferno in the end, as it turned out. The problem is, though, going to another tournament, like a European tournament, where we're not going to have Season, it's hard to know how the map veto is going to work out in VP's favour. Like in future best of 3s, I would favour Fnatic again to win. In fact, some of them I'd favour Fnatic to win 2-0, because they can get series where it's like Inferno Cash is the first 2 maps, or Inferno Mirage first 2 maps, and they can even win 2-0. So I don't think this is like VP's changed the dynamic and they're going to beat Fnatic going forwards from now on. No, but these were the right circumstances where they're able to get the win this time. And crucially, to overcome the issues of last ESEA LAN, if you remember, where they won over Fnatic in the upper bracket, and then the final, Fnatic just 4-0'd them. This time, VP had a bit more about them, a bit more nous, and Fnatic weren't at quite the same level they were able to be at the last one. So let's go to the number 2 team, Fnatic. In terms of characterizing Fnatic's performance, they were still a very, very good team, but they weren't the monsters that they were in previous tournaments, and especially not the monsters that they were at their absolute peak in sort of like October into November of 2014. They weren't the monsters at that level. Like, their CT sides are still the best, but at this tournament in particular, their CT sides weren't those monster CT sides that we think of. When Fnatic's at their best, they are the team who's getting to at least 10 rounds on most of the maps as CT. That wasn't happening that often here. They lost to Titan, which is actually a classic underdog mismatch, if you know what I mean by that. What I mean by that is, Titan is a much worse team than Fnatic. Fnatic is a much better team. They're the best team in the world. But of the underdog teams against Fnatic, Titan has the best matchup of almost any other team in the world against Fnatic. A few reasons. Well, we know the Existence reason. Existence's style works really well against Pronax. Pronax's style is based off mid-round calls, and his setups are based on reading where the terrorist in-game leader is going to go. But he's even credited for years. Like, it's so hard for him to play against Existence. His old Very Games teams always seem to be in his head. This is what Pronax said. And it happens again and again. Existence just has a really good intuitive read for how to attack Titan at Fnatic, how to throw them off, how to get reads in there, how to make counter reads. And again, it allows his team, Titan, which is much less skilled and a much worse team, to be able to match up and even beat this Fnatic team again and again. There's the Kenny S factor. Okay, Kenny S hasn't been the god that he was in the past, but every time in history that Kenny S has played opposite JW, it puts JW off his opening. It puts JW in a more passive positions. It just takes a bit of that risk and a bit of that balls and that balls to the wall confidence and that inability to feel fear. It puts some of that fear of God into JW. I've noticed that is something that does happen, and so JW becomes less of a wild card factor, and Fnatic tend to play more of a default style. Now, in terms of maps, yeah, they lost Inferno to Titan, but Titan's one of the few teams. Titan, you have to realize, Titan accounts for 50% of this Fnatic lineup's losses on Inferno offline. They have, 3 out of the 6 wins against them. So Titan's a team, and including this one here, Titan's a team which have historically shown themselves able to win on that map. Existence is amazing at getting T-side rounds on that map, so I'm not surprised that's possible. I still would have bet that in theory, Fnatic should win it, but no, amazing performance by Titan. Very, like, one of the best they've ever had in winning that one impressively. It wasn't even Inferno as much because they only lost that to Titan. That was the question mark at this tournament. The real question mark was their cash play, because they played cash a lot, and yet this is where it was suspect, because this team, Fnatic, is supposed to be able to get some godlike CT halves on cash, and yet, yes, we know Titan's one of the best teams, if not the best terrorist team in the world at the moment, and is very good on T side of cash. Well, Fnatic's so good on CT, they should be able to lock it down. They should be able to beat them. Yet they gave up 8 rounds on Titan's T half on this map in the rematch. This isn't the second time they played in the first half. So it doesn't matter that they won the series overall and got past Titan. That's a question mark. And then when you look at the other times they played cash in this tournament, obviously getting totally smashed by Titan the first time, playing against VP on it, cash seems to be an issue where they've weakened on this map. All the metagame now isn't suiting them, and these other teams are getting to good levels in terms of T-side play, both Titan and Virtus.pro, where now maybe this is where we now start to see the Fnatic team have some vulnerabilities, become a bit more mortal, where they can be beaten on this map. Whereas before, that was part of the reason Fnatic was so dominant. Everyone wanted to play them on Inferno, they were gods on Inferno. Mirage was a very solid second map. Cash as the third map, they didn't have to play as much, but they were absolutely one of the best on it. Then they still could beat some teams on Dust 2 even. You go down the gamut and they've got all these maps in their back pocket. Now if you take away Cash, suddenly, okay, they've got Inferno still. They've got Mirage, yeah, but against how many teams? Hey, on Mirage, Navi would love to play him on Mirage. VP would love to play him on Mirage. So you've got some maps where you get some wiggle room now. Now maybe this is how some of these teams gain ground on Fnatic and give them more of a close game or even beat them at tournaments. So that's something to watch going forwards. Fnatic's cash play in future offline tournaments. Now losing to VP, the history of the past matchups is that, yeah, Fnatic, this lineup would always get the better of VP. They'd always find a way. Usually they'd even be able to sometimes embarrass them, except for that ESL 1 Katowice major. So it is interesting that they'd lose to them, because VP had been lacking that sort of a monster win over a big team like that in those last few months of all those great top fours, but never making a final, never winning a final. So this is interesting here. Will this change the dynamic? I feel like VP can be closer, partly because of map pool scenarios like this, but when you take season out, yeah, I'm not entirely sold on that yet. one of the major issues I thought for Fnatic when I assessed the performance level of all the players they had here is that they simply did not get the godlike performances that we've seen even in early 2015 and even in the end of their best period of at the end of 2014, the last sort of 3 months. And I characterize it like this. At the moment, their issue is that their best player at the moment is Olofmeister, Olof M. He is the best player. He's the one who's carrying the most. In general, that's a big problem because of how the team was set up. I always said the thing about Olof M is he has the capability to be the best player in the world. Maybe he is the best player in the world at the moment. But the factor is, what made Fnatic so dominant is that he didn't even need to be. He was this luxury third best player on their team in terms of the impact he would have on the game. When they were at their best, at the end of October, in early November of 2014, what they were doing was, Crims was this monster player who always put up seemingly the 20 kills, 25 kills, 30 kills on a map. Super consistent, uber good on CT sides, especially on Mirage and Inferno. That was the linchpin. That was the foundation, the base of what was carrying and putting them at an elite level. Then you added in JW as this crazy wild card who'd have halves, who'd have maps, where he'd just dominate the opponents, do impossible things that demoralize opponents. Those two players combined, when those two players are at their peak, Crims and JW, that's when Fnatic's at their best. Because then they've got Olofmeister sitting almost off to the side, like, hey, I could be the best player in the world. On this team, I don't even have to be. So then when I even throw in just an above average or good or very good performance, now they're unbeatable. Now you're talking Fragbite Masters Season 3 LAN Finals performance, where they were just unbeatable at that time. They were in God mode. That team arguably might be the greatest team ever in terms of CSGO, in terms of like the level they're at that one tournament, and if they'd have faced anyone, could anyone have beaten them? Their map pool, the strength of all the players, the people who were going off, the people they were beating and in what fashion, they'd be up there. They'd be in the discussion for greatest team ever. That one team in terms of level they reached. That team is not the one that we've seen even in 2015 or at the end of 2014. That's a different team now. In fact, the team we've seen this year has been mainly all of them carrying. And then actually what's weird is it seems like Crims has just become like good but not as consistent. JW is much more erratic. He goes disappearing a lot more in a lot of the big series. And then you have to add in that actually what's weird is Flusher's playing better. He's having crazy rounds. He's having some AWPing sometimes. But that's not when Fnatic's at their best, at their core. They're not at their best when it's all of them and Flusher. They're at their best when it's Crims and JW, and then all of them just puts you over the top completely. If he turns up, and if he doesn't, you can still beat anyone in the world anyway. So I think that's an issue that I'm looking for going forwards in terms of who will be the stars of Fnatic. Will they have to adapt their style to fit these new players who are taking the carry role? Can the others reintegrate themselves, reassert themselves as the main stars? That's a big question to ask. Will the opener affect JW? Is Crims, did we just have a 1 month, 2 months where he was a god and now he's just going to be one of the best? Certainly a question to be asked. Let's go to Titan, the third place team now. Beating Fnatic on Inferno and Cash is big time shit. These are the two maps that Titan want to play versus everyone. Inferno, they can beat any team. I mean, they've smashed, think about it, in the past few months, they've now smashed Envious on Inferno. They smashed, was it Envious on Inferno? Yeah, I think it was. Let me think. Am I mistaking that? I think I'm right there. They smashed Fnatic on it twice, iOS, and now here. That's incredible shit in itself. They beat Nip on it when Nip was super good with Makalele. They beat Envious on Dust 2. Inferno's a map that that can be the Night Titans Playground, their best map. Then in Cash is also one of their best maps, the second best map they want to play, and they're willing to play it versus everyone who doesn't ban it. Their problem there is, I feel like their Cash is going too close. Their Cash is playing close versus every level of opponent. And this is Titan's problem in general, is that they tend to be playing to the level of their opponent. And I have a theory on that. But in terms of their Cash, their problem is they can have like a super close game against Luminosity, who on paper as a team, yeah, they have good historical players, but as a team shouldn't be anywhere near Titan's level. That's super close. And yet it's also super close versus TSM, versus Virtus.pro. There's a problem there when that's happening. If it's one of your best maps, you need to be winning it comfortably, because you need to be getting one of these two maps, Inferno or Cash, as your definite win in a series. Whereas if you can actually lose Cash sometimes, now it's going to be hard to win those best of threes in semi-finals, in finals, to ever win an event or have top three placings and become a top three team in the world. That's what's going to hold Titan back. The map pool problems they have. In terms of playing to the level of their opponent, I feel like a component of that is the strengths of Titan when you look at them. They're super good in terms of existence, scouting opponents, reading opponents, knowing what a top-level opponent will do, and therefore being able to design clever CT setups, knowing where to attack. Well, against lesser teams, or teams that don't have such a defined style, like teams who aren't in the top 2 or 3 or 4 in the world, where you're not scouting them all the time, they don't have the mega good style that they just execute on, now that's less effective. Now it becomes more just an aim battle, and you know what? Teams like Na'Vi, teams like, Penta, I guess, they were one. Teams like TSM, these teams definitely can match up against Titan and can beat them and give them a great chance, because just in terms of skill, some of them can outskill some of the Titan players. Titan still has the super strong T side. I think they might be the best T side team in the world, just as a straight statement. And then if you add in best T-side team relative to the talent level they have, I think they're easily the best in the world. What they can get out of T-sides is fucking amazing. But you see the same story again and again. They get these insane T-sides, and then they'll go on to a CT side, and that's where they're just like a little bit too shaky. All their issues are on CT side. They can't quite get enough rounds. They can't ever put full lockdown onto maps. That's what it feels like. They can get rounds here and there. They can be close in rounds. They can have chances to win rounds. They need hero plays, though. They're not like the lockdown team where they get that site and you just can't go to that site. That does not happen with Titan, especially since Kenny S went out of God mode. Now, in terms of that, Kenny S God mode era, I'm calling it now, I'm afraid. It's over. Like, it's been too long now since he was in God mode, which is, I think his God mode ended, unfortunately, at the end of the ESL 1 Katowice offline qualifier, because then ESL 1 Katowice, yeah, he was good but not great. At this Star Series, again, good but not great. This last tournament now, the ESL Pro Series, again, good at times, occasionally very good, but not a god. And at this tournament, again, good but not a god. The problem here is, Kenny S, it's not that he's not one of the world's best players. He's still one of the 10 best players in the world. He probably always will be. He nearly always was throughout CS history. He's still going to be one of the best players in the world. The difference was, he was by far the best player. Like, Olafem was only in his level, because Olafem also plays for Fnatic, has his whole team around him, has all these maps, had everything going for him, every advantage. Kenny S had almost every disadvantage, yet was by far the best player in the world, dropping insane 50 bombs, 30 bombs against everyone. You just knew he would dominate, regardless of how his team even did and what the map was. It was utterly insane, that run he went on that lasted maybe, I mean, I'd have to look into it, but I'd guess about 3 or 4 months at least, if not 4 or 5. He really was in God mode. That seems to have ended now. Now, what's strange about it is, it's almost unfortunate, because what's kept Titan alive is that as Kenny S's God mode has ended, almost exactly at that time, ESO 1 Katowice, somehow Maniac has gone into God mode. Well, relative to Maniac, let me just put it out there. Not in Kenny S God mode, but we never thought Maniac could be this consistent, putting up the crazy frags. It's not like he's doing it with mad aim. He just seems to have a way better sense of his role and where he should be on positions and getting favourable situations where he can get a kill with his skills. He's now gone into his own mini-god mode, where his level's really good now. He's one of the best players in the team in terms of impact. Added into that, after the first ESL, now we've finally got Apex is coming to this level. Now Apex is really hitting his form. Now on one hand, that's great. It keeps Titan in the game. It keeps them in the same sort of position in the world where they can have these great T-sides and they can win these rounds. And Kenny is still good, and so they're able to be more effective now. The problem is, you're going to always have to think back. God, what if those two players, Maniac or even Apex, one of the two, could have just turned up during Kenny S's God mode? If one of those two players could have played at this level then, only one of the two, not even the both, they really could have won some tournaments. They could have won iOS, Pantamera. They could have won maybe even the last ESEA Season 17 where they almost beat Fnatic. Kenny S just needed a little more help, and he was in such God mode, they might have won. So now you look now, and part of the problem now as well is that while Kenny S is just playing good or is one of the best players in the world, but not a super impact player that he was before, the problem now is that Maniac and Apex also tend to take turns in how well they do it. They don't even go off at the same time as each other. One of them, they'll either have rounds where Apex gets 3 rounds in a row, you're like, wow, what sick fucking first bullet headshots, entry fragging, like taking people on and killing this guy and then this guy in fast succession, and then Maniac will get a few kills a few rounds later. It's very rarely the same time it's happening, so they can't even dominate the game in that sense. They're still super smart on CT side. It's not just existence on the T side. On CT side, they have some of the cleverest setups in the game where they read how the game's going in terms of how they're being attacked, and they'll have a really cool boost, or they'll have great positioning, a great Molotov, great anti-smoke, a great flash. They get the most out of the tricks in the game. The boosts, the flashes, the Molotovs, rotations. They've got great stuff there. Their problem is they don't have mad skills at the moment in terms of compared to teams like fucking Envious and Fnatic and even VP to a degree. They're not on that level of skill across the board, man for man. So they can't just lock down sites and just frag you. They have to use their guile to win rounds. And the problem is it feels like it takes every trick and every little piece of nuance to get the rounds they do get, and even then it's not enough on CT sometimes. I mean, their cash in this tournament, not only has it cost them before, and it's been questionable at times, considering it's one of their strongest maps, but their cash versus Virtus.pro in this tournament really cost them. This is the real cost of losing that cash game, which was close to almost getting to overtime, and even could have been a win from how the first half went. What that cash game cost them wasn't that they had to then go to a third map, which is Inferno, and then they got smashed anyway. Whereas, you might have thought they'd had a chance on Inferno. What it cost them was if they'd have won that cash, which remember, they were very close to getting, they had like 14 rounds or 13, 14 rounds. then they would have been in the grand final. And then even if Fnatic or Virtus.pro meet them there, they would have had to lose 2 best of 3 in order not to win the event. So, okay, even if they bomb the first one, even if they fuck up a map like Cash and Inferno, then they get to play some others. Their chances of winning the event would have been very good, even though those other teams are better than them, Virtus.pro and Fnatic. And they would have worst place finished second and got 25k. So that one sort of 5 to 6 round segment at the end of Cash is what actually cost them their whole, what could have been either a win at the tournament or a second place. That was an extremely costly sort of 5 to 6 round segment where it was CT play on Cash that they couldn't get it done. Going beyond Titan, because I still feel like Titan's going to be in the same sort of spot. They're the world's best dark horse because they're the one. Because even though Navi's a great dark horse as well, difference is Navi's likely to lose to Envious in most games they play. They're likely to lose to Fnatic in most of them. Whereas actually Titan have this bizarre matchup where they're going to play Envious really close, and they actually are going to beat Fnatic reasonably often, considering Fnatic are the best team. So I expect Titan to be in a similar sort of spot because they haven't got enough of the other intangibles: better map pool, better CT half. Kenny S playing in God mode as they had before, which you can't have that luxury. It's only going to happen every now and then in the history of CSGO. People can't keep up that level of God mode. He's one of the best players like Guardian, but he's not in God mode every time. Like, come on, you can't expect that. So I expect him to stay in a similar spot. Now let's move to the 4th place spot, which is Mousesports. Now, all you really need to say about Mousesports at this LAN was they didn't do anything magical against the top teams. In fact, they were just decent. But it was just a good LAN showing for them. There was a bunch of NA teams here who you would have expected to place ahead of them. But no, Mousesports did work. They got it done. Nico got to add another legit LAN performance to his team here. Obviously, they lost Alu previously, so it's good to have a solid performance when they don't have him. And he was obviously a very skilled player in terms of outside of the top 8 level teams. They had a luxury that they had him there, so it's good to see that they can still perform well. Going beyond Mouse, we get to all the NA teams. And obviously, no NA team made the top 4 here at this LAN, which is the first time in the history of CSGO that's happened. I mean, they had, let me think, there was 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So there's been 6 ESEA LANs. This is the first time an NA team never made top 4. Now, that's terrible. And I'm going to make a video separately about my thoughts on the NA scene. So I'll just give you some brief thoughts on these teams specifically at this tournament. And then I'll go into some of the reasons as to why I think they have problems in my other future video. So the teams that made it the furthest were CounterLogic Gaming, CLG, and Nihilum, who used to be Denial. Now, CLG, they weren't convincing enough, because when you look at their performances in this tournament, you have to ask yourself this: if they're ever going to make legit runs to like top 4 in big tournaments in Europe, big international tournaments, and they're ever going to win series, best of 3 series, then they're going to need to have at least 2 maps they can win. Now, what is their best map? If I ask you that question, you might answer very quickly, oh, well, they say their best map's Cash, or in terms of in NA, they're great on Cash. Yeah, but look at their Cash at this tournament. It could be very ropey at times. There's issues where, historically, if I think of their best map, I'd have said Dust 2, because I think of the times that were able to beat, they beat Hellraisers on it, they beat CLG on it, they beat LDLC on it, the now Envious team. So this would be the map I would pick as like, this is their best map, because I've seen them have crazy performances on it. They can lose on Dust 2 as well. Dust 2 can be played close by lesser teams against them. They haven't even got they haven't got one legit home map, and they definitely don't have 2 maps that you can look at any of the teams above them in the top 8 in the world and go, oh, they'll win at least 1 map against them, and hey, they could even win the second map and win the best of 3. You can't say that about CLG right now. So this tournament wasn't convincing at all for me, because this is a tournament with Mousesports there where they should have at least been contending for 4th place. The other team who made it that far, Nihilum, I mean, that was a bit of an overperformance. I think you look at their roster, yeah, they don't really have the names where they have the talent level. Like, if you look at, I don't think their talent level is very good, but hey, they did good work at this tournament. Obviously, yeah, they were able to play CLG close, so yeah, that's reasonable. Going forwards, though, I think this is probably about the best they could expect right now, unless they have major roster changes. As we look at the 2 teams who finished last place, Cloud9 and Luminosity, you cannot finish last place at this tournament if you're Cloud9. In fact, the worst place that should have been acceptable for Cloud9 in this tournament was 4th place. Because with the amount of money they have, the resources, the players they have, the star level and the actual skill of some of their players, and the experience and history, even as playing together as a team past tournaments, and of them all throughout CSGO, this should have been a definite 4th place, otherwise there's big problems. Now, they didn't even finish 4th place. They didn't even finish 5th or 6th place. They finished fucking last place at this LAN. That is utterly terrible. Added into the last ESEA before they had Shazam, and they've got some serious issues. I'll address them a lot in my NA video when I do it. But First of all, they lost in Inferno and Cash to Nilium. That cannot happen because those are the two best maps in terms of their opinion, Cloud9, and in terms of historically, they're the two best maps where we at least think they can play well and they can have advantages on. If they can't win those two maps against a lesser team from NA, what the fuck are they going to do internationally? No, Cloud9's in big trouble. Now, Nihilum, I don't know how you say that name, played CLG close. So, okay, you might say, well, they're not a bad team. Yeah, but Nihilum got fucking wrecked by Elevate with stand-ins who've never played in their team before, in theory, aside from online games every now and then, but Skadoodle hadn't played, at the CEVO LAN. They got utterly fucking dominated there. So, if you're losing to a team like this, you can't say, oh, but they're up-and-comers, and hey, maybe they're going to be the next good team. No, you blew this big time here. They're not as good as you made them look. That's pretty much my thoughts on the teams at the LAN. Now, what are some quick takeaways that I'll maybe go into more detail in articles and videos soon? The Fnatic and Envy era of those being the two teams who just won every event that at least one attended, that seems to be over. Now, not really, because they're still the major favourites to win all the events going forwards. But we've seen now, teams have shown that they can beat them in best of threes and beat them on key maps. We've got 3 or 4 different teams who've now beaten them. NIP, Virtus.pro, Titan, Na'Vi. We've got teams here, and these are all teams that are just below the level who are fighting to take those spots, where now they're going to lose some of those. And now it's not the scenario, well, you can't win because if both are there, you'd have to beat both, or, you know, now it seems like are going to. So they're still going to win events. I'd still put them as favourites to take some of the next events, but it now actually legit feels like other teams can take an event when one of them's playing exceptionally, like Na'Vi at ESL, like VP here. Now it feels like that's a possibility for real. Kenny S is no longer God mode, sadly, as I mentioned. VP is still the same VP of old. They are that team that could finish top 4 before. The difference is, first of all, some of the advantages of Envious and Fnatic have been eroded a little bit in terms of map pool and metagame advancing beyond the UBCT side. So I feel like now they have a better chance because they always have been one of the great T-side teams who are very dominant there. So I feel like now they can win events. That's the difference. Towards the last half of the year, after their win at Gfinity, they just couldn't win events. And it took a miracle to win Gfinity. Now it feels like they can win some. I still wouldn't put them as a favourite to win events. I'd still say that they're only going to win at best something like, I'd say 1 in 4 events they attend. That's the best case scenario. But they're now back as being legit, where it's not only that they can have a good semi-final performance, they can win an event now. They're back at that level. The circumstances right now are correct for them to be able to win an event again. In terms of, who else? Okay, Titan are still the best dark horses, like I say, and what makes them different from Na'Vi in that sense, why I say they're the best dark horses, is because they have the lower floor. Like, Na'Vi's not going to lose to some of the teams Titan could, but Titan has the bigger ceiling, because they legit can just straight up beat Fnatic in a best of 3, whereas, come on, Na'Vi at the moment, we don't know that they can necessarily do that. NA teams are in trouble across the board. There's no other way around that. And like I say, I want to go into more detail about that. Part of the reason I'm not going to go super ham on that now is because it's going to be stuff about more than just ESEA LAN. And I want to watch more games from NA LAN so I can get a sense of them domestically to really go in depth on that one. So that'll come up soon.